Let me welcome you to session 31 of our Bible study in the book of Matthew. I've entitled this, Who Then Can Be Saved? In the days of the greatest apocalyptic event ever to occur in the history of man, the dying of old physical Israel and the birthing of new spiritual Israel, there were times when even the disciples of Jesus wondered if any could be saved. Much like the cry of Jesus, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? As he was suffering his apocalyptical death, the birthing pains of the new kingdom of heaven were bringing similar cries of anguish from those suffering to enter its portals of glory. After Jesus had finished his fourth extended teaching session, as recorded by Matthew, he departed from Galilee, and I might pause to make mention, this is the first preaching and teaching of Jesus outside of Galilee as he moves towards Judah and Jerusalem. He departed from Galilee to continue his ministry in Judaea. In a series of events that would eventually lead him to Jerusalem and his death, the reality of what Jesus was teaching sharpened its cutting edge into the souls of men. Although there were still at this time multitudes of people following him and receiving their healing, the religious leaders of old dying Judaism began to be more vocal in their opposition. Although their hostility was meant to destroy the influence of the teaching of Jesus, their aggression often became the means of greater revelation of his teaching. For example, after Jesus had come into Judaea, the Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him and saying unto him, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Obviously, the question was designed to get Jesus into a debate over an interpretation of the law. Jesus, however, as emphasized throughout Matthew, carried the discussion beyond their intentions to the very heart of God. Jesus asked the Pharisees, have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? In the final analysis of the creation of man, God did not finish the creation of man to be an individual alone, but created another person for mankind to exist in a relationship with another human being. As we have seen and will continue to see, man and what it means to be a person created in the image of God requires the interaction of another person. In other words, the image of God, the foundation of what separates man from all other created animals, cannot be manifested in an individual person. It takes at least two to fulfill the requirements of experiencing life as a true human being. Thus, Jesus would say, for this cause, the fact that man needed a woman to complete him, making them male and female, shall a man leave father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. To be completed in what it means to be created in the image of God, man would have to leave where he was being nurtured by his parents to experience the perfection of that nurture in his relationship with another. From the first breath of his life until he breathes no more, man was created to be ever growing in the life that he was meant to experience. When a man and a woman begin to interact with each other, the interactions forms attachments in each of their lives. This attachment between the two becomes the essence of being one flesh. With the word flesh and they twain shall be one flesh, meaning flesh as stripped of the skin, that is specifically a human being as such. The end result of the attachment being glued to, that is to adhere, which is the meaning for cleave, glued to, that is to adhere, is what it means in the final analysis to be human, as opposed to being just another created animal. The mystery of a man and a woman becoming one flesh in the attachment is what God meant man to be as co-participants in the image of God. Thus, in the context of, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause, Jesus would say, what therefore God hath joined together, to yoke together, that is figuratively conjoin in marriage, let not man put asunder. To place room between, that is, part, reflectively, to go away. The question, is it lawful, means the Pharisees, as with all organized religion, attempt to put what God is doing into an overt code of ethics. In doing so, organized religion has made marriage between a man and a woman into an institution rather than what it is, a relationship of interactions. Perceiving male and female created he them to be an institution, organized religion then thinks that man, in the guise of that religion, can nullify what God has done and is doing. It is only in organized religion that man thinks he can negate the inner attachments, the creative actions of God working in a relationship. However, man in himself, or in organized religion, cannot put away the irreversible interactions of the heart by simply writing a bill of divorcement. Of course, Jesus nullifying their desired debate over is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause, they were quick to say to him, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement, properly something separated, and to put her away, meaning to free fully? If divorce goes against the very nature of God's intention at the time of creating them, male and female, to be one flesh, the Pharisees wanted to know why Moses would give them permission to divorce. Jesus responded, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. With the word hardness in hardness of your heart, meaning hard-heartedness, that is specifically destitute of spiritual perception, a law is needed when spiritual perception is destitute. When the grace of God is not flowing freely, the works of man in the form of organized religion will rise to the forefront to attempt to control the actions of man. Jesus would say to the Pharisees, Moses did give a writing of divorcement, but from the beginning it was not so. As in previously stated, as recorded by Matthew, Jesus would in essence say, it has been said, but I say unto you, whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her, which is put away, doth commit adultery. Again, since marriage is not an institution, but an interaction of a relationship, it is only in the attachments written in the heart by the creative actions of God at work in the relationship that makes a marriage of male and female. It is only in the world of organized religion and political systems that marriage can be entered and dissolved by their own approved certificate. The creative action of God working in co-participations of the image of God creates a single attachment between two individuals that is pure and undefiled in the sight of God. No man or woman can simply decide to be free for whatever reason from the attachment made by the creative action of God. To attempt to do so and then to try to make those same connections with another, in the words of Jesus, commits adultery, the violation of an existing relationship. Likewise, to attempt to set the woman free, and she then becomes connected to another man, not only causes her to commit adultery, but also the one she is attempting to be connected will find himself in an adulterous relationship. Is it any wonder that the disciples said to Jesus after his discussion with the Pharisees, "If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry"? In other words, as the disciples will ask later, who then can be saved? Matthew recorded that Jesus then said to his disciples, "All men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given." Finally, Jesus would add, "He that is able to receive it, let him receive it." There are two additional points that Jesus makes in his teaching concerning male and female, and they twain shall be one flesh. Jesus stated, "Whosoever shall put away his wife, except it be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And whoso marrieth her, which is put away, doeth commit adultery." The phrase, "except it be for fornication," and similar statements in the Old Testament are probably the reason why the Pharisees asked the original question: is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? Jesus, going back to the original creation of God, making man to be co-participants in the image of God, stated that there is only one cause that will enable the co-participants to be set free from their attachments. Unfortunately, organized religion has spent hours, days, months, and even years trying to codify, except it be for fornication. Since organized religion, however, is always interpreting marriage as an institution, their code of ethics to safeguard true marriage will always fail. Fornication, in except it be for fornication, means much more than acts or thoughts of sexual sin, although it can and often does include such acts and such thoughts. Fornication ultimately refers to the violation or corruption of the purity of a relationship. When a participant, through selfish intentions, regardless of the motivation, no longer allows the created actions of God to form the attachment of one flesh, then the offending participant can be set free, put away from the relationship. The offending participant has, in fact, already severed the creative action of God that binds the two together. It is relatively impossible for one to put away the other when the other has already put their self away. At best, one can only affirm that separation, sadly, has occurred. Marriage, as a relationship, realizes that the shall cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh, comes from the glue of the creative actions of God in the interaction of the relationship. The creative action of God, once written in the heart of man or a woman, cannot be put away simply by the exercise of the mind. The creative acts of God informing the intimate interactions of male and female can be nullified or eradicated only by a similar work of God in the heart of the participants. It takes God to put those attachments in, and it will take God to nullify those attachments. Only God can break the emotional binding that occurs when two people become connected together by the created actions of God. Again, the disciples heard Jesus give this discourse on male and female created he them, and they twain shall be one flesh, with its consequential struggles between the two to grow to oneness. They said, if the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry. The response of Jesus to his disciples was, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. Obviously, the saying, the teaching, has as its foundation the coming together of a man and a woman forming a pure and unadulterated relationship, perfecting oneness. Jesus knew, however, that there would be some who could not be able to enter such a relationship between a male and a female. He stated, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. For example, he said, for there are some eunuchs which were so born from their mother's womb, and there are some eunuchs which were made eunuchs of men. In addition, he added, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Even Paul said that those who were unmarried care for the things that belong to God, how he may please the Lord. Finally, Jesus said, he that is able to receive it, this teaching concerning male and female, let him receive it. After this profound and challenging teaching concerning marriage and divorce, really divorce, Matthew included at this point of his record the necessity of becoming as little children in the kingdom of heaven. Matthew recorded, then were there brought unto him little children that he should put his hands on them and pray. For some reasons, especially after seeing and hearing Jesus use a little child in his teaching concerning the kingdom of heaven, the disciples rebuked the little children that were brought to Jesus. Jesus quickly said, however, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. After the events of the Pharisees tempting Jesus, which left the disciples wondering why Mary, and then blessing the little children when the disciples had rebuked for them being brought to Jesus, the next event, as recorded by Matthew, leaves the disciples even questioning who then shall be saved. If the discussion on divorce and being rebuked for mishandling the children challenged the disciples, A camel to go through the eye of the needle discussion would really cause them to question their understanding. Matthew recorded, behold, one came and said unto him, good master, what good thing shall I do that I may have eternal life? Again, the question reveals the misunderstanding of the one who raises the question. Coming out of a Judaism that had been meticulously organized, the question was, what good shall I do? Although, as we will see, he was religiously doing a lot of good things, he evidently knew he was still missing something. He was seeking a life that was perpetual, not necessarily in the next life, but a life, a quality of life that would not die in this life. Jesus told him, if thou wilt enter into life, keep the commandments. Misunderstanding that keep the commandments meant to do, the rich young man answered, which commandment shall I do? Jesus responded by listing the last 6 of the 10 commandments of the law. Thou shalt do no murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Honor thy father and thy mother, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. The rich young man said to Jesus, all these things have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? It's a hard lesson to learn, but regardless of how much one does, he will always feel that there is something else that needs to be done. In fact, the more man does, the more lacking his life becomes. Evidently, the rich young ruler not only took pride in keeping the commandments, but his greatest sense of accomplishment and the ground of his being was his wealth. Jesus said to him, if thou wilt be perfect, if you really want that sense of really living, go and sell that thou hast and give to the poor, and thou shalt have treasure in heaven, and come and follow me. As will all who enter the life that lives, experiencing the glory and the power of the kingdom of heaven, the young man would have to experience conversion. His thinking would have to change, and Jesus must become the focus of his life. However, Matthew recorded, when the young man heard that saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Upon seeing the young man depart, Jesus said to his disciples, verily I say unto you, that a rich man shall hardly enter into the kingdom of heaven. Jesus would add, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of God. The disciples, hearing this proverbial statement, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, they became exceedingly amazed, saying, who then can be saved? Jesus, seeing their struggles to understand, said to them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Perhaps wondering just where they stood with being saved, Peter said to Jesus, behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? Jesus said, verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Jesus had sent the 12 apostles to preach the kingdom of heaven to the lost sheep of Israel. In their going and sharing that the Messiah had come and the kingdom of heaven was now being established, they would hold the keys to the kingdom of heaven in their hands. In their sharing the gospel, The coming of Jesus, sitting in the throne of his glory, establishing the kingdom of heaven to the lost sheep of Israel, the 12 disciples who were sent would be sitting upon their thrones, judging, distinguishing by the gospel they preached the 12 tribes of Israel. Obviously, it is not so much the 12 individuals that would be judging the 12 tribes of Israel, but it would be the message that they were preaching. For after all, when it's working correctly, what they're preaching is not them saying something about Jesus, it's actually Jesus saying it in the message. The 12 disciples were also told that in their going, they were to provide neither gold, nor silver, nor brass in their purses, nor scrip for their journey, neither 2 coats, neither shoes, nor yet stays. Thus, Jesus could now say to them, everyone that hath forsaken houses, our brethren, our sisters, our father, our mother, our wife, our children, our lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life. Jesus also wanted the disciples to know, but many that are first shall be last, and the last shall be first. It may look to the world that you have nothing, but in my kingdom, you have everything. You are experiencing the life that never dies, regardless of the circumstances you face in the world. He would later say, for this cause came I into the world. I pray that each of us can indeed experience the fullness of the glory and the power of the kingdom of heaven. Since Jesus has come and will come in every circumstance of life, we have the hope. As Peter says, even though we don't see him now, in the midst of the trouble, we rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, knowing that our hope and faith will indeed produce being delivered and being saved by Jesus. Who then can be saved? Those who simply believe on Jesus and let him become the focus of their life can indeed experience the salvation of the glory of the Lord.